The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our ServiceNow series, where we interview the best and brightest of the industry to share their story, advice, and views on the exciting world of ServiceNow and digital transformation.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Alldus podcast. I'm your host, Ben Sparks, and today we are continuing with our digital transformation series with a focus on service. Today we are very lucky to host Jeevan. Jeevan currently holds a position of Vice President and has successfully led multiple managed service accounts, the specialization on cross-functional leadership and digital transformation. He's got a large focus on IT and making his business stakeholders successful. In this conversation, Jeevan's going to be giving us his views on digital transformation themes, specifically in the banking and finance sector, which is where he currently resides, how risk and control is shaping the transformation sector in general, some of the key projects, and he's going to give us some insight into some of the value that he's brought to organizations, and also something that we hear a lot of, which is around stakeholder management best practice. And given that Jeevan's role is very much holistic across functional work across the business, he knows he's got some great stories to tell there. So, Jeevan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ben. Thanks for having me and inviting me as a part of to be a guest in this show. Thank you very much.
No, it's a pleasure. So let's start by giving our listeners an overview of kind of who they're listening to. Talk to us about your current role and responsibilities.
Sure, Ben. Thank you very much. As Ben introduced, I'm Jeevan Lobo. I'm currently working with a banking and a financial institution. I work as a member of a cross-functional global web and application engineering team in the capacity of a vice president. So my core and critical roles are related to risk and compliance, where I drive risk and compliance initiatives for my engineering team. And in addition to this, I also support the team with product management activities, inventory management, and also drive a lot of continuous improvement initiatives.
Obviously, we're going to touch on some more product-specific things later on, but let's zoom out a bit. You're in banking and finance at the moment. What are some of the macro trends that are driving digital transformation in that sector at the moment?
Sure, Ben. So, Ben, I want to start with, you must have seen this common thing in the recent times. What's the biggest, who has influenced digital transformation? And the options were, is it the CXO, the CIO, and another one option was COVID. I'm not trying to make it in a light term, but apparently with the recent COVID, you've seen a big spring in digital transformation, and that holds
Indeed.
good. And that holds good for the banking and finance industry. Now, I just made my top 5 points. There are many more, and we can go on for a day. But to begin with, the trends that I see is, number one, there's a accelerated consolidation and drive for scale, which is pretty visible right now. You see the credit unions, for example, they're trying to be, we see a lot right now, maybe around 5,000 in the US right now. The forecast is, say, by 5 years down the road, we're going to bring it down by 50%. So that's number one for me, Ben. Second one is the innovative customer interactions, especially with this banking and finance industry as such. We've gone pretty deep with self-service. It's been a common norm today, but as we move on, we're going to look at more advanced social networking apps, video conferencing, AI, robotics. So that's number 2 for me, Ben. The third one would be mainstream technology trends. We're getting pretty mature, I would say, in cloud. There's still a long way to go. Hybrid cloud has been in there for some time, but along with big data, mobilization, 5G, these are like new techniques and trends which have to be integrated with the digital transformation in finance. Number 4 for me would be, there's been a huge change in our consumer attitudes and expectations. Now, I can speak of that personally for me also. We in the bank where I work in, we've seen a lot of changes and a lot of productivity, especially because people were remote during this time. And our consumers, our customers, they all are aware that lots more can be done, our clients. So this is a big trend which I see. And the last one I would like to end with is cryptocurrency. So now we must have heard of Bitcoin technology. This is increasingly being adopted by financial systems. There are a few banks who have been fairly successful, but we're going to see a lot more adoption of the cryptocurrency assets, digital currency in central banks. So these are the top 5 I have, Ben.
Wow. And you're right, each of those could be its own podcast. So thank you for summarizing that so eloquently. Just to challenge that, and I suppose we are seeing obviously a lot of digital transformation in some of the other highly regulated industries, such as life sciences. How does banking and finance differ?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ben. Thank you. So in healthcare, health and life sciences, and I've had a decent stint there, maybe 3 to 4 years there. So digital transformation in healthcare is more like the positive impact of technology in healthcare. Here, while both, if I have to do a contrast, banking and financial and life sciences, we all are focusing on customer experience. But where the difference is, and what I particularly found, is we're seeing an increased innovation, a lot of technology trends. So, for example, telemedicine, artificial intelligence, blockchain, electronic health records. These are just some examples, some concrete examples of digital transformation in healthcare, which are completely reshaping right now. And if you look at health and life sciences, we're looking more at innovation, right? Innovation is the name of the game there. In fact, the one big contrast, which I could say perhaps, is there's been when you compare it with, say, a banking and financial industry or the vertical, the adoption of digital transformation is slightly lower in healthcare and pharmaceutical compared to banking and financial. So that's a big, what you say, contrast. With banking and financial, particularly being more involved, you have new features, you have user experience rollouts. With health and life sciences, there is a stringent regulatory control, the HIPAAs, the FDAs. So change is relatively slow, but see that slowly changing. So, for example, in our recent experience with COVID, for example, if you've seen how quickly we came up with vaccines in the Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, the typical trial, I see that pattern, the trend changing. But to compare, of course, digital banking and financial are way up in the game, and health and life sciences are not too bad. They're catching up.
Awesome. That's really interesting. So we talked about trends. I'd like to come back to finance, if you may. What are some of the challenges for financial institutions? And that's an intentionally wide question, so I'll let you roll with that.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I'll try to break it down into 3-4 points. And number one big challenge that I see is the enormous number, the plethora of manual processes that are used in the financial industry. When we speak about automation and all that stuff, that continual improvement efforts which goes on, but there are a lot more manual processes which eventually slows down the end user customer experience. So that's a big challenge, and with automation coming in, with new technologies coming in, we should see lesser back-end manual processes. So that's one big challenge. The second one, regulatory and compliance, holds good for every sector vertical, and being a very impactful industry for any economy, financial industry is strictly regulated. We have GDPR rules, and again, you have country regulations too, ensuring that the banking and financial industry is at par or doing their best to ensure that regulatory and compliance risks are not compromised is another challenge. The third one I would speak about are multiple outdated legacy systems, right? Remember, we have evolved from the mainframes to the current technology, but we still do have early adoption of technology by banks. We have a lot of mainframe systems, irrespective of the organizations, do not help us integrate with new systems, right? So now this is a big challenge, and there have been a lot of back-end dependency over the years, customer information, and so many things. Trying to get ahead of the game, getting to move out of that outdated legacy technology is going to be another challenge. And the last one, which I had, is the back office inefficiencies, right? While this is very much reduced, and I see more effective and prominent organizations going away from that, there's still a lot of paper and manual processes which have been there for a long time. We see it lesser in few countries, few regions, but yeah, there's still a long way to go in terms of getting rid of all this manual work.
Thank you very much. So let's talk a little bit more about risk and control specifically. Why is this important?
Sure, Ben. So this is something very close to my heart. Even though I started been mainly involved in delivery management, program management, but in the last year and a half, I've been very closely involved with this. Now, risk management, now when you look at risk management, what is it? You just identify risks, problems, any disasters. You're trying to be proactive. You want to ensure that you don't get hit very late in the game. And then with us, with banking financial institutions, the penalties that you have to pay, the reputation of your company, all that is at risk and at stake. The risk and control basically is to help your company attain its goals and profits by protecting it against any financial risk. And that's the core and essence of risk management. Now, when it comes to the objectives and why do we need to do this, is any firm, and that could be, and I'm not only particularly narrowing down on banking financial, but any firm should be prepared for potential losses in the most economic way possible. And having a good controls, internal controls, and by the way, risk management are mainly internal controls. Having good internal controls helps reduce anxiety. You don't want to be struck by a thunderstorm very late. And also to meet any externally imposed obligations. So you've got your external regular auditors, and you've got your legality. So you want to ensure that you're doing the right things, you have controls in place, you're pretty structured, so that you don't get hit by an audit and thereby pay penalties. And there's a lot of things which get added to it. Your reputation value, your share values can go down. So there's a lot of ripple effect if risk and control is not maintained. And by having risk and control as a culture, as a practice in an organization, it can help employees. They can reduce the likelihood and severity of potential project risk. So, for example, we get so many phishing alerts or scamming mails, all those things. If an organization builds that culture of risk and control very deep and with every employee, it really helps the organization not to get hit very late in the game.
Thank you. And obviously, ServiceNow specifically as a platform, we're seeing that become more and more prevalent within financial organizations, be that banking, insurance, or credit risk, etc. Why is this the platform of choice at the moment for finance? And I would love to know specifically from a risk perspective, if you don't mind.
Sure, definitely, Ben. So I've been involved, at least I've worked with ServiceNow as a platform, like it's been my seventh year. I've really loved the way ServiceNow has evolved. And when I say that, I used it to just implement ServiceNow as a IT service management tool, period. And this was 5 years ago. Today, as we speak, we look at ServiceNow evolving into, they're so market friendly. They've got separate modules for ITBM, which is IT business management. They have an IT operations management. They have a separate module on governance and risk. So I'm particularly fond that you're moving with the trend of what the market is looking for, which is very good. With respect to advantages of ServiceNow, and something which I personally liked are the advanced high availability, being hosted in the cloud. There's no and ease of you using it now. Even now, I use it on the phone. You have, of course, with the right access and privileges. But yes, that's one thing. The fact that it could be used as a good tool for like with other applications that we have usually in-house, having business continuity planning, all that could be a big concern, but it's pretty well taken care of with ServiceNow. Also, the fact of universal access, customer flexibility, these are some good advantages I see, and where I've used ServiceNow extensively. Now, coming to risk module benefits, now, some things which I use even at work are two modules. One is the GRC module, which basically stands for governance, risk, and compliance. And then there's IRM, which stands for integrated risk management. ServiceNow comes now with the GRC module, and this has at least helped my organization automate and help provide broader understanding of all GRC activities. Of course, you have to configure them, customize it to your requirement, but look at this. You have everything configured in a single window, real-time monitoring, what's going to fall off and what you have to do. If there's a next vulnerability coming in place, you have all your controls to be ahead of the game. So I like the GRC module. And the fact that it's integrated with CMDB, which is so core. Again, every organization, it all depends. You may have the best tool, but you also need to customize it for your requirements. So I really like the fact that it works on a set of foundational data, and then you can customize it and you can utilize it across all your integrating layers of also the reporting capabilities. Right, so that can be broke down and customized at a granular level for different layers of stakeholders who would like to see them. And last but not the least, it requires a high level of work. I already touched upon this. An implementation of a ServiceNow GRC requires high level of work, even though organizations or there might be some expert consultants who have implemented their GRC across, but you still have to start again, ensure that you understand the organization, understand who are the recipients for it. But yeah, that's something I had on GRC and why I like the risk and control part particularly better.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
And we mentioned before in my intro, you've been involved with multiple, not only ServiceNow transformations, but other digital transformations as well. Could you mind sharing some case studies with us and maybe some of the challenges you faced and what the actual project outcome was and how that benefited the business?
Sure, Ben, we'd love to. I'll give you two case studies. My first one is perhaps this is support. I'm talking about a bank which had got approximately 15,000 users and utilized a lot of IT service management tools and had multiple configuration management databases, also called CMDBs. So this global bank was spending way too much administrative time on change management. I'm specifically speaking about change management because changes are so critical, and capturing them, tracking them is something very important too, because you eventually get audited and you need to you have something called as a traceability, where you need to see where the failure did happen. So apparently raising a change took an employee in the bank an average of 7 hours, not because of the actual activity of raising the change, but they had to have it register across many tools, because then they had multiple boards to review it. And in addition to that, there was a lot of manual approval process. They did not have a workflow in place. Of course, with time zones, with geographies, that was a big issue. Regulatory compliance was a challenge because you had changes which went well, perhaps with the local laws here in the US, but not so maybe in Europe. So they had a lot of controls to be monitored. The risk of service failures were high. So this is where the actual challenge or the problem statement was. And again, this is sometime in my career, we worked together with a big team of ServiceNow consultants, architects, and also some project managers. And what we did is our solution was to build a single integrated tool set so that we automate delivery and control of incident, problem, change, configuration. So that was our solution. So at a very high level, I would say we helped automate change processes so that employees could deliver a better banking experience while maintaining regulatory compliance. Now, I could spend half a day just going through that process because I know how cumbersome it was. But thanks to our team, there were a lot of work which had to go at the back end, speaking to stakeholders, understanding their systems, understanding why it was important, going back to the regulatory requirements. There was a lot of back end process mapping, and then you had to see the team feasibility. So there were a lot of challenges. But to let you know of the output, it took us a good 10, 12 months, okay? And what we did was, the outcome was we had one integrated ServiceNow with 15 data sources, which ideally, some of them were ServiceNow modules, some of them were maybe SharePoint-based modules, but we got them all integrated. And as a result, the average time to raise an incident, which took them, I think I mentioned 6 hours and 8 hours, that just went down to like less than 30 minutes. That too, ensuring we had all our regulatory controls, ensuring that we had our workflow approvals. So we did a lot but this was a big benefit for us. And in addition to this, we did a lot of saving because we decommissioned their legacy systems, which could just a lot of cost saving for the organization. So Ben, I'll say one great experience that I had, I think 3-4 years ago. Another one which I would like to talk to you about is a bank. Again, they want to transform their operations with the ServiceNow platform. So basically, the problem statement was, and this was more to do with the customization of the tool, right? So they had a tool, they definitely had a tool, but when they raised tickets, they had basic categories and subcategories. They weren't, and they had, so for example, suppose they had a problem with the monitor, they would say, okay, hardware, monitor, and that was like a classified one. But if they had something which was not a part of the category, something ad hoc, they just had an option for ad hoc. And what eventually happened was 90% of the incidents were what you say tracked as ad hoc. Now what that did was people, or teams, were unaware of what actually was the problem. So because when you cannot narrow down to what the problem is, it becomes difficult to find a solution. So what we did was we did a couple of things. One is we, of course, improved the ticket categorization criteria, and we took advantage of the other modules of ServiceNow, the recent modules of ServiceNow. I think it's not so recent now, but we have the ITBM, which is the IT business management. Now, we had a lot of project requests, program requests, all of them coming in through incidents, which apparently was not the right source of channel. The tracking of them, business would say, I raised a request, where is my project completion? So what we did was we bifurcated, we channelized the sources properly. So for example, we defined what has to go into the ITBM module: projects, portfolios, resource management. Okay, great. What has to go into the ITOM, that is IT operations management? Okay, events, reducing your noise. So you have anything which is alerted, okay, that goes to that module. Then what goes to incidents? What goes to requests? So what we eventually did was, and by doing this, we were able to transform user experience. So the huge email volumes, all the clutter of events coming in, informational event, all that was reduced. And what eventually happened was we were able to reduce the time to resolve. I would say it was like a needle in the haystack issue for most businesses. For an IT team, they wouldn't know what to prioritize and when to prioritize. So defining SLAs. So by doing that, we were able to reduce the time to resolve, increase the first time resolution, thereby help our customers become happy. And also one last thing which we also did was the new hire onboarding. So whenever a new person got onboarded, the tracking of the ticket beat from the time they got access to their seat to the time they get fully onboarded with the applications, all that work took a lot of time. But we introduced a module which would track end to end with approval workflows, and all that became so smooth. So just to give you some stats, it would take an employee 20 days until they became fully productive. We got that done in 3 days, thanks to this. So I just gave you I can go on and on. I'm very passionate about this, Ben, but but these are the two things which I had in mind.
No, they're fantastic. And I really appreciate those examples because they talk very much to the business outcomes. And as you mentioned there, and the happy customers, obviously great examples there. Maybe you even do this on a daily basis, but if you were to offer some advice, some sort of key top coaching to a C-suite executive who was just about to embark on some digital transformational change in the business, what key things should that person have front of mind?
Sure, thanks, Ben. In fact, I have just registered myself as an organization champion who drives initiatives for the organization. So, I can really associate with this. So my number one point will be identify a C-suite champion, which is what I am trying to be for my organization, in terms of you need to be the champion because you need someone to take the onus and the responsibility and accountability to drive that within. And then thing is, it's very important before enforcing change. It is very important to walk a mile in the shoes of the customer. So it could be an application owner, an infrastructure owner. It could be. So you need to figure out, okay, play devil's advocate and see why wouldn't that work for them, or what could be the annoying factors. That's very important because unless you walk a mile in their shoes and if you go ahead and impose, it will definitely be retaliated and you will not get any success. So understanding that is very important. Third point would be definitely you need to get a buy-in and you need to have measures, right? So when you speak of once the basic groundwork of assessment and understanding is done, you have to level set. You have to say, okay, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, but we have to define how would the customer be benefited by following that change? And you tell them you have to do this for you to get this. That's very important. Defining success, how it will be measured, and showing that and projecting it to your across the organization is very important, because most of the time I've seen people, even if they are initially not accepting change, they once they see the results and once they know that they have been a part of instrumenting it positively, the mindset changes, and then that's when they acknowledge and they become more accountable. Yeah, and then definitely evaluating, aligning your business processes. I it's one big thing which I've seen very success, which works out very well for me, is data measurement. And if you're able to translate it and show it at any level of the organization, to show people why you want to do it, so that becomes very important. And one last thing is, I think we need to, with a lot of talent dearth in the industry, I think we need to double our talent. We need to ensure that folks are multi-skilled, they have a skin in the game, engage them as much as they can so that they feel a part, they feel engaged. I have a small note here which I mentioned: move away from system of record, which is more like a compliance thing, to a system of engagement, wherein they feel, oh yeah, I'm a part of this bigger change.
No, thank you very much. And we mentioned before, and this is a topic that people would really love some mentorship around, which is stakeholder management. I think we see a lot of people that are even navigating purely technical roles and now are in business technical hybrid roles. So what are your top tips for stakeholder management?
Yeah. So stakeholders, and I love and thrive at making friends and connecting with people. Number one, Ben, for me, is you need to treat stakeholders as your partners, right? There's a big word called trust. And unless your stakeholders trust you, you still have that, you still draw the line. But for them to trust you, they need to see something in you. So basically, I'll tell you that some tips that I do is I try to connect with people in a way that I understand what they need, and they shouldn't see me as a person who's just wagging along, but who's basically genuinely interested in their problem. So that becomes very important. Establishing the trust is very important. Then the second part would be like, stakeholders need to have a skin in their game. It's when they say skin in the game, it's not that they need to feel that they're just not signing the check, but they're also participating in it. So basically, they need to have some responsibilities in terms of course, they give the guidance, but they need to know we need to understand what are their requirements. And it's very important for us to provide that communication back to them so that they know, okay, I asked for 10 points, at least I'm getting progress on it, or I'm going back. And that's absolutely important to do that. And it's important also to share news, to be transparent with your stakeholders. I've seen a lot of relationships fall apart when I'm talking about professional stakeholder relationships, when some people try to conceal what's the truth is, right? So for example, you might have had a delay, you might have the project is going maybe 20% behind schedule, but they try to camouflage it or they try to show something else. And it becomes and then we're speaking about trust here, right? So if and once a stakeholder knows that you don't trust them or you're playing dirty, you know that the end is inevitable. So maintaining transparency is absolutely important. And another tip is having that dialogue. We work in huge environments. You have users, you have developers, you've got business, and then you've got risk and control, you've got the supporting departments. You need to ensure that you have an ongoing dialogue. You don't want to introduce, say, a new change which will make the developers very unhappy, right? Or you don't want to do something which developers are very comfortable with, but then the users say, no, I am not open to it. So preparing for that, having the dialogue, getting them into some Scrum Agile meetings so that they participate is very important. And then with what do you say? With a lot of this collaborative technology available, you have Teams, you've got SharePoints, you've got all of them pretty available. The moment people can sign into Slack, for example, that's a pretty cool tool. You've got a lot of these tools to keep your stakeholders updated. So I think might as well leverage them. But bottom line, build the trust, keep it transparent, and then the results will follow.
So sticking on the theme of kind of mentorship, another theme we're seeing is, and especially be this a consulting company or be it an end customer, we're seeing digital transformation teams scale very quickly, probably arguably maybe even too fast in some areas. As an executive yourself, what are your tips for building and maintaining a winning team?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's so hard to retain talent and to find talent in these days because talent people are having lots of opportunities. But the best practice, some practices that I follow is I respect individuality. So every individual is unique, and I would allow each one to excel and let each person shine. It's very important to understand your team. Each member may be different, so some may communicate very well, some people may present very well, some people are very good at analytics, some of them can do the automation development. It's important to level set and meet each team member where they are and appreciate them for what they are. That's absolutely important. And also giving a team space, giving each team member, give them the space. I know there is a lot of, and that's where the strategy of a leader plays a different role, right? You as a leader, you need to look at some backups, but you need to develop an environment wherein your team excels, they feel happy, they get their space. Some people would like creative space, some people would like, so I think, what you say, no, everybody is unique here, you need to respect that. Some tips I have for building a strong team, right? The word smart is usually used, standing for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound, right? So setting those goals and having that level setting expectation with the team is absolutely important. One is individually, and number two, as a team, how do they gel? It's very important to set roles. As a leader, I've found many times where you have overlapping roles where team members are not comfortable when their roles are picked by another person, or when they're off, somebody else picks it up. Ensuring that you define the roles well, and in case something of that happens, people are okay to accept. That is important. Something which I found very recently is experimenting. What happens is we come with a fixed mindset and a perspective of an individual who would typically surprise us. So maybe give a task which you think a person B may not be very good at, just to see. Sometimes it works wonders. So as a leader, experimenting sometimes, I'm not asking to do this all the time, but you need to give that space so that you can build a creative ability of a person who found a blind spot themselves. I'm totally open with this new age of embracing diversity and women leadership, and pretty much open irrespective of, as far as the work is done, it's more about embracing diversity. That's something which really builds a team culture and bonds a lot of, get new ideas, new perspectives, better ways and ideas of doing things. Of course, being accountable to the team. As a leader, a team is looking up to the leader and ensuring that their requests are met, like for a small thing like getting back to them in case they are taking a leave of absence, or if they have something very personal going on. It's being accountable to the team is also a key factor to build that team. And of course, they say communicating effectively is the key. So in addition to group meetings or weekly staff updates, having that one-on-one, and sometimes an off the team, maybe a monthly or a quarterly connect outside, just to get to know the team better. So these are some few tips that I had, Ben.
Great ones as well. So just as we come to a close, I'd love to, get your views on what sort of ServiceNow, what the future of ServiceNow looks like, for finance, and maybe how will the platform evolve, and what are we potentially going to see from the future state of ServiceNow, in your opinion?
Sure, Ben. So as I also covered some time back, I've worked with ServiceNow as a tool for the last 6 to 7 years, and I've really witnessed their, sensitivity to needs of the market. I can be, I'll say, from a testimonial in terms of using the tool. So with financial, and coming back to my industry, banking and finance, we are under increasing demand from authorities and customers all the time, every time, to provide secure, available, and scalable services. And with today's digital environment, this is like a prerequisite, not like it's a given. So to maintain this competitive edge, we require a platform of choice, which could be achieved at a low cost, but has got it can take care of your security requirements. So we just spoke about GRC some time back. It has to take care of with cloud services. There's a lot of increase in cloud adoption. So we are looking for tools, and ServiceNow, I feel, fits that bill in terms of providing that assistance. We covered the advantages some time back, its availability, its architecture being multi-tenant. So these are some good features. I think one thing which particularly stands out for me is how ServiceNow they have modules designed. We spoke about the GRC module for risk and control. Then they had developed ITPM, ITOM. I know that they have some special modules for HR. They have modules for finance, so backend processing. So I expect, and I'm looking forward, based on what I've seen with ServiceNow in the past, I think they are going to evolve with the customer needs. And with data being plentiful, there's AI, there's cloud, and all of this is going to take center stage. So I'm expecting ServiceNow to come up with solutions that could match what's going to come up in the market.
Fantastic. Jeevan, this has been such an insightful conversation. Thank you so much for your time and going into so much detail. I'm looking forward to maybe getting you on here for round 2 in 2022.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Ben. It will be a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.